There has never been a more efficient time in history to distribute propaganda than now. The information age has brought about many opportunities for individuals and communities, but it's also a time of great dangers. On a more positive note, I can remember as a child, before the internet existed, when my parents and I would travel out of town and we'd go to another city, I'd get a Yellow Pages, you know, the phone book, and I'd look it up for the weird things that I thought were cool, but I couldn't find in my small town. And much to my dismay as a kid, I would always look up fencing and just find fences and not actually the European art of defense or sword fighting. And it took many years before I could learn about kooky opportunities for me to have fun and explore and learn through the internet. But unfortunately, by connecting everybody, it gives the opportunity for powers that be to try to influence people unnaturally, based upon what they want. So today, let's go through all of the dictionaries back to 1859 and look at the definition of propaganda at different times, how that's changed, and then come back and talk about the levels that we're at. I frankly wanted to wait longer to do this video, but it was so important because so much of what's going on in the world right now relates to just this. So it's a base we've got to start with. Also, espresso! Also, in the future, I'm going to back my car in because now I miss having the wing as a bookshelf. Here we are. So, first dictionary, it is the current Oxford Dictionary of English. Oftentimes, I'm disappointed by this book because in our postmodern times, we've gotten very minimalistic, and sometimes, as we found in the case of fascism, this book really did a poor job of actually defining it. However, propaganda, it's a little better. Information, especially of a biased or misleading nature, used to promote a political cause or point of view. As an example, he was charged with distributing enemy propaganda. The dissemination of such information as a political strategy. The party's leaders believed that a long period of education and propaganda would be necessary. That's a decent, garden variety, quick definition. But the second part, and this is interesting because it gets into history, and we're going to see this reflected in all the dictionaries of old. Propaganda was a committee of cardinals of the Roman Catholic Church responsible for the foreign missions founded in 1622 by Pope Gregory the 15th. I hope I got that right. I'm not a Roman numeral guy. Anyway, and the origin is Italian and from modern Latin, Congregatio di Propaganda Fide, congregation for propagation of the faith. And obviously propaganda roots in there with propagate, which if we look down here, propagate, spread or promote. Well, I think we all knew that. Propaganda is a little easier to understand. Basically, it's a bunch of crap thrown at us to make us believe something. We see this all throughout literature and movies and such. When we look at the past, whenever there would be a change of regime, there would be propaganda coming. And propaganda is something we see most readily through history or are familiar with it in times of war, World War I, World War II, and all the various propagandas that existed for every nation. And yes, I'm even mentioning the United States. We are very good at propaganda. It's not just everybody else. So let's go right back to 1859, and this is Noah Webster's first unabridged dictionary, and yes, this is an original printing. Physically creating a book in the mid-1800s is a lot more difficult than now. There were no computers, and people had to lay things out by hand and print it. The popular name of a society in Rome charged with the management of the Roman Catholic missions and styled Societas di Propaganda Fide. Okay, there's our historic definition. Fascinating because this book gives a bit less than what the brand new one is. Now, if I go above that, it says 2, that may be spread or extended by any means as tenets, doctrines, or principles. Now I'm thinking, okay, let me go back to the previous page and we'll get to the rest of the definition of propaganda, right from the root word of propagate and propagable. In 1859, the only definition of propaganda was specifically relating to the society in Rome and Roman Catholic missions. Fascinating. It's only the historic definition. Apparently that word had not yet come to mean specifically the distribution of information and literature to make people think something. Interesting. 1859. Let's fast forward a bit. We get to Webster's New International Dictionary. This particular one, and I love this book. I think it's wonderful. It's from 1911. We are obviously before World War I. But a lot has happened, including the American Civil War, shortly after 1859. Where is it? I will find it. It's funny, propaganda is a lot easier to find in real life than it is in this dictionary. Okay, 1. More fully, congregation of propaganda, a congregation of cardinals, the sacred congregation of cardinals de propaganda fide, established in 1622, charged with the management of missions. We got that in the others. All right, so let's move on. 2, hence, any organization for spreading a particular doctrine or a system of principles. The doctrine or principles thus propagated, the scheme or plan for the propagation of the doctrine or system of principles. It's here, and it's talking about it in 1911, but you can see it's a bit newer. Perhaps it hasn't become so widespread and mainstream that it really has to be dug into. So this is 1911. Fast forward through 2 world wars. Okay, now we're into Webster's New International Dictionary. Now, if I'm not mistaken, this one was printed in the mid-1950s. Yes, 1954. A little less than 10 years after World War II. Propagandum. Any organized or concerted group, effort, or movement to spread a particular doctrine or system of doctrines or principles, as the need of a more active social propaganda. Often dissemination of ideas, information, gossip, or the like, for the purpose of helping or injuring a person, an institution, a cause, etc., as the victim of the opposing party's propaganda, belligerent propaganda among neutrals. Hence, a doctrine, system, or ideas spread through propaganda. Any doctrine or doctrines expressed for the purpose of such propaganda, a scheme or plan for the propagation of a doctrine or system of principles as the cleverly worked out propaganda of the enemy. We see a little bit more on what specifically propaganda is, and now we're talking about how it can be to help or hurt. Now, let's move forward just a little bit farther. This is the 3rd New International Dictionary, and the principal copyright was 61. Things even got spicier. We've gone through now the Korean War, and we're in the height of the Cold War. Propaganda! A group or movement organized for spreading a particular doctrine or system of principles. We've got that in the older books. 2, dissemination of ideas, information, or rumor for the purpose of helping or injuring an institution, a cause, or a person. Steady erosion of the socialist about the wrongs done by the people. Okay, that's speaking of it here. Okay, great. That could be good to look at. Doctrines, ideas, arguments, facts, or allegations spread by deliberate effort through any medium of communication in order to further one's cause or to damage an opposing cause. Example, brushed aside the peace proposals as mere propaganda. A public action or display having the purpose or the effect of furthering or hindering a cause, distribution of free food parcels, is the first successful piece of propaganda that the Western powers have thought up. Interesting. Now we've got a couple of extra things here that are hugely powerful. It does again speak of dissemination of ideas, information, or rumor for the purpose of helping or injuring an institution, cause, or person. But this is where it gets interesting. Doctrines, ideas, arguments, facts, or allegations spread by deliberate effort through any medium, that very much includes the internet or social media, of communication in order to further one's cause or damage an opposing cause. Man, we've gone through it. We see it. We get it. You guys know this. Let's talk about the existence of various levels of propaganda. For us to just believe that propaganda are funny old war posters related, or to making you think that someone's just your enemy, or it's just some softball pitch questions from a hired interviewer to a person to make an interview look a certain way, well, that's propaganda. But that's propaganda 101. That's elementary school. It goes without saying that generally I think an independent thinking person who has the ability to consider ideas or concepts without necessarily having to adopt them or feeling personally attacked by them, those are the people in the best position to sniff out the propaganda, to shovel through the BS, as we do on the Golden Shovel. But it's pretty sophisticated nowadays. And I'm gonna make videos on this as a playlist regarding to spotting propaganda, but I do want to bring this up. There are a couple of deeper, darker levels of propaganda that in a sense are hidden. And it'll be fascinating to see if dictionaries don't just evolve into what this one is, and I consider a postmodern garbage minimalist, where basically we're losing information from what actually we had in the 60s and before. If in the future propaganda will potentially include things such as the paid actors and the PSYOPs, the psychological operatives, Now, I don't say that in terms of any conspiracy theory. I'm saying that as matter of fact. This is reality. This happens. It doesn't mean everybody is a paid actor, and it doesn't mean everything or everybody is a PSYOP, but it surely exists. I'll give you this example regarding paid actors. I remember having a long drive with a student of mine at Genius Garage. He genuinely believes that the news, all of it out there, is actual journalism, where the people presenting, or journalists, are paid to go out, find a story, and report on it objectively and unbiased. And it's kind of amazing, but there are people like that still exist. And that's genuinely incredible. I think we need to realize that true journalism is virtually completely gone. And if and when you do find it, it's actually pretty easy to recognize. But to find it, you have to dig so far, you'd probably give up. But we had a long car ride together, and I pointed this out to him. So many of you know I came from the automotive world and automotive YouTube. I'm a big car guy and motorcycle guy. If you look at the big automotive YouTubers, one thing that's very popular, because it gets good views and creates a huge base of crazed fanboys, is screwing with the cops. To screw with the cops or do that online, you have to effectively bait the police. You have to be pulled over. You have to have encounters with the police. So these people are going to put themselves in positions to taunt and flaunt. And then they have the opportunity to then record things and act like the victim or the good guy. When in reality, they're fishing for the cops. They're fishing to put them into a position to make them look bad. And then they're going to show only the video and the circumstances and the stories that makes the police look bad, and the police are out to get these guys, and these car guys are just guys having a good time. Even though they're bratty little jerks with daddy issues that probably pound cough syrup in the past for fun and drive Lamborghinis with straight pipes and ridiculous colors just for the sake of screwing with people. I'm saying that as a guy that drives a brightly colored straight pipe Lamborghini. But I'm not out there trying to be an actor to screw with the cops on purpose. What I'm telling you is it's fake. It's a pseudo-reality positioned in a way to make the fanboys think cops are bad and these guys are some sort of hero when they're not. They're just bratty little children baiting the cops to make it look bad to create it. And in a sense, what that is a type of propaganda. The funny thing is about it, the type of propaganda it is makes no sense. They're not actually personally benefiting or profiting off of an exact institution or a person going, hey, we want all car guys out there to think cops are bad. But in a sense, they are. Because they're getting paid by the algorithms that are created by whatever social media platforms they're on. Ooh. See how underlying sketchy dangerous this is? So these car guys that get to become heroes that really have no talent in the real world other than this, they get to do it by screwing with the cops. Why do they screw with the cops on purpose? Just to make the cops look bad and create this video? It's because they're paid by the social media platform and sponsors. And they get bigger sponsors by having more views. And they get more views by the algorithm liking it. And the algorithm likes it based upon how the social media platforms program it. So the really controlling propaganda is a few layers removed for those that are controlling the social media platforms. And it filters through multiple layers of plausible deniability until you get these DBs screwing with the cops in their ridiculous colored cars. That's a type of propaganda. That's just car guys. But with this student, I spoke with him. I said, let me ask you something. Let's say you headed up a number of media outlets or news organizations. You know, just an automotive YouTuber might go out and buy a $100,000 car and accidentally let it burn to the ground because it'll get views and it'll be ultimately profitable for that YouTuber. A $100,000 car, let it burn to the ground because it's profitable just for some dingbat on social media. But what if you owned an entire news organization and businesses around the world? You're playing at a different economic level, you are, aren't you? Okay, so let me ask you this. Let's say you wanted it to look like the entire United States was on fire and there was massive social unrest in the streets. Well, if there's a new movement going on that perhaps your news organizations and others promote, as in like some horrible thing is going on, maybe it's tensions of people of different wealth gaps, maybe it's tensions of people of different race, maybe it's tensions of any different types of people, and there's some little thing that happens somewhere. Well, you promote the heck out of it to make it look like a bad deal, and then you get everybody to talk about it. and then you get it promoted everywhere else. Well, if there's people maybe demonstrating or peacefully protesting, like they're just out going like this, maybe they get a picket sign or something. Well, what if you pay 5 people $5,000 each that understand what's up and just say, get out there, rile up the crowd, start throwing rocks in windows, things like that. So it's 25 grand for a city, $25,000. Let's say you pick a major city. I don't know, maybe it's Portland, Oregon. Maybe it's Chicago. Maybe it's New York. Maybe it's Atlanta. If there's protesting that's going on, or if there's not, you just get those 5 people to go out, get a bunch of other people, run around, start hucking rocks, lighting things on fire. But it's mob mentality. Maybe they don't get caught. Maybe they don't care if they do because it's $5,000. The point is, if you throw $25,000 at all these different cities, Chicago, Atlanta, New York, Portland, that's just 4 I named right off the top of my head. It's only $100,000 to somebody that owns an entire media outlet, news organization, and possibly businesses. And you just made it look like 4 major cities in the US are on fire. Everybody's rioting and going crazy. And it only cost you $100,000. And you already knew it was going to happen. So you're already set up to write all the news organizations, to be right on it. Have you ever noticed that things happen too fast? Something goes on. Maybe there's a new conflict in another part of the world where 2 sides that have been warring historically forever, not liking each other, one attacks the other one. And then all of a sudden in the United States, like instantaneously, the side that you wouldn't expect to be supportive, everybody's out there protesting to support them, from in the streets to universities to organizations to in the news, instantly? That doesn't make sense. That doesn't add up. That's not natural. The point is, paid actors exist out there. The point is, when you know things before everybody else knows they're going to happen, you can get all your pieces in a row to make it look a certain way. And you can influence the public to do things and then show it in the news. The paid actor. That's a hugely powerful part of propaganda, and one of the most devious. Because now we're living in a theater of reality. Reality has been taken and been created into the stage for us all to see. And we're stuck in the chairs looking at it through the news. And sadly, there's people like that young student of mine in the past that actually believes news organizations are real journalism. When they're effing not. I can tell you with certainty, of the last 4 or 5 years of leading the nonprofit and doing automotive YouTube, that of all the articles that I saw written about the nonprofit, it's somewhere between like maybe 1 in 10 at best articles written about that are actual journalistic articles where there were interviews and they did their own due diligence. The rest of them are just regurgitated press releases. I just admitted that. I know it to be true. And it's true with something that's perfectly nice, with no nasty slant or propaganda or anything nefarious going on. Just something really good and nice. So what do you think's really going on out there? Okay, well, let's finish on the other one, the PSYOP. Okay, I don't really think Taylor Swift's a PSYOP. I don't like her music at all, and I think she whines about things that, like, oh, the male patriarchy is stealing my music. Yeah, well, the male patriarchy is what made you famous, honey, so sit down and shut up. I'm just saying that because I really don't care for Taylor Swift much. But I don't really think she's a CIA PSYOP particularly, but it is funny because, as we know, she has terrible taste in men. So why would we want to listen to whoever it is that she promotes? But PSYOPs, they do exist. A psychological operative. It's a very high level of how to manipulate the public. You know, the paid actors, instigators, etc., do exist out there. When there is a person or entity that exists out there with enough power, and it doesn't have to be media, that has influence, has the ability to leverage, has the ability to guide or change popular thought, that can be a PSYOP. It's kind of like a spy, in a sense, or an operative in that regard, but only for the psychology of the people. And the high-level aspect of that is, can you get out there and instigate a war or crossfire to happen where the PSYOP isn't the one that gets lit up? It isn't the organization that created the PSYOP. It's none of those things. They get the people to fight each other. Did I just describe everything that's happening in modern times in America? We're fighting each other? Don't you think that's strange? Don't you think it's funny, only in the last few years alone, we went from generally being pretty good and tensions being rather nice, and even going back to the 80s and 90s, racial tensions and differences between people, it was out in the open and we were getting pretty good with being with each other. And now all of a sudden this is the worst place in the world and everybody's fighting each other. Don't you think that happened just like really fast and kind of overnight within the last few years? Yeah, I do. But I've lived long enough to see a trend even as a dumb kid. This isn't natural. It was known and pushed by people that were planning on getting here ahead of the time. And at the very least, I hope people look out there and go, wait a minute, too much is happening too fast for this to be natural. There's one sign. This isn't passing the sniff test. I think we're gonna have to shovel through a load of crap. Casey's golden shovel. That's another big test. So I'd like to just tell everybody to remain objective. Hold on to your beliefs, whatever they are. I respect you for having them. You got to be in that place from your own life and observation. However, we do need to be able to look at other perspectives, other ideas and concepts, and give them genuine consideration and regard. And only by doing that can we know that either our beliefs are true and accurate, or perhaps it's time to reassess. But you have to be somebody, you have to stand for something. But if you can't, if your beliefs aren't strong enough to stand up to any kind of scrutiny or consideration, then maybe you don't have the best beliefs. Maybe the values that you have weren't as good as you thought they were. Food for thought. Anyway, propaganda, we've defined it. This is going to be a long playlist, I think, in the future because it's everywhere. And frankly, this is the big reason why I created Casey's Golden Shovel, which is both metaphorical and sometimes literal, of shoveling through the BS to get to the bottom so we can all move forward for a better tomorrow. See you guys later.